This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Neetsahone, and today is Friday, and that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Today, we're going to look at the Orc creature type. I was motivated to make this video because Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth officially releases today, and it is, of course, a set filled with orcs and orc payoffs. Orcs were of course originally created by Tolkien, and they also happen to be one of Magic's oldest creature types, originally making their debut in Magic's very first set. Magic's fantasy setting was of course heavily influenced by Tolkien, like pretty much all other fantasy media. Despite being around for so long, orcs haven't received that much support over the years. Very few planes feature them prominently, with Tarkir the plane where we've seen the most of them before Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. To be eligible for this list, a card had to have the Orc creature type or be capable of making an Orc creature token. In all, there were 87 cards eligible for this list, and in this video we'll take a look at the 10 that have left the biggest mark on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8 is worth 2 points, this includes events like Pro Tours, and a second tier top 8 is worth 1 point, this includes events like Regional Championships. Alright, let's take a look at the top 10 orcs in Magic. At number 10, it is Shaman of the Great Hunt. This 4-mana 4/2 comes with haste, and when a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. You can also pay 2 generic and 2 blue-green hybrid mana to draw a card for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Obviously enough, this includes the Shaman, so you'll at least draw 1 card. Furthermore, because it makes your creatures bigger, this can end up drawing you lots of cards. It gained all of its points in the Standard of 2015, where it appeared in Naya Aggro and Green Devotion decks. At number 9, it is Ruin Raider. This orc is a 3-mana 3/2 and it comes with a raid effect, which means if you attack with a creature during your turn, you get a bonus. In this case, at the beginning of your end step, you reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand while losing life equal to the card's mana value. In other words, it's the Dark Confidant effect, but you have to jump through some hoops to make it happen. Either way, drawing cards off of this can be really powerful. The Raider has seen play in both Standard and Pioneer mono-black aggro decks, which tend to keep their curve really low, minimizing the amount of life you can lose from its ability. At number 8, it is Orcish Lumberjack. It has 4 points just like Ruin Raider, but more Pro Tour top 8s, so it won the tie. This is a 1-mana 1/1 orc that you can tap and sacrifice a forest to in order to add 3 mana in any combination of red or green. Obviously, that means this can provide a huge 1-turn mana boost at the cost of giving up a land. While in Standard, it was played in red-green control decks which ran sweepers like Yokel Hops. The Lumberjack could help you get there sooner, and giving up a land to cast it didn't really matter because you were destroying them all anyway. Over the years, it has also seen sporadic play in both Legacy and Vintage. In Legacy, it goes quite well with Life from the Loam since you can just get lands back that you sacrifice to it, and in Vintage, it's seen some play in Alurin combo decks, where it can help you accelerate your mana and go off sooner. It doesn't have any points since 2018, but it does have a pretty powerful effect, so it's hard to count it out entirely. At number 7, it is Pitileus Horde. This orc is a 3-mana 5/3, but you lose 2 life at the beginning of your upkeep. It also has dash, which means you can also pay 2 generic and 2 black to cast it, and if you do, it gains haste and returns to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Obviously, this offers an efficient creature with downside, but it's nice you have the dash option, which you'll choose when the coast is clear for you to get in for 5 right away, or if you can't really afford to lose the life. It saw play in Standard, where it appeared in a variety of aggro decks including Abzan, Rakdos, and Golgari. At number 6, it is Orcish Settlers. This 2-mana 1/1 orc can destroy a whole bunch of lands. If you pay X twice and pay a red, tap them and sacrifice them, they destroy X lands. It gained all of its points in Standard recurring survival decks. This was Magic's first Reanimator deck and first Toolbox deck, and it used Survival of the Fittest to search up cards for the right situation, and Recurring Nightmare to reanimate powerful creatures. Orcish Settlers was featured as a 1-of in the deck and could be searched up when your opponent had problem lands, and could even serve as a way to lock the opponent out of the game, since you could sacrifice it and reanimate it every turn until your opponent was out of lands. If you want to know more about the recurring survival deck, this is something I've covered in my deck history series, so check that out. Also, the fact that this is the Orcish version of the famous painting American Gothic is pretty hilarious. The art definitely looks like it should be on a silver bordered card, so it's pretty fun that it's black bordered. At number 5, it is Merciless Executioner. This 3-mana 3/1 orc makes both players sacrifice a creature when it enters the battlefield. It gained all of its points in standard Rally the Ancestors decks, which were built around sacrificing a bunch of creatures and reanimating them with Rally, and the Executioner was a good creature for the deck because you could get it to trigger twice without too much trouble, and because you could sack the Executioner both times, making the effect less symmetrical. It hasn't gained any points since rotating out of standard. At number 4, I have Ironclaw Orcs. One of Magic's original orcs that appeared in Alpha, Ironclaw Orcs does not look impressive by today's standards. After all, it's a 2-mana 2/2 with downside. That downside being that it can't block creatures with power 2 or greater. The good news is, if you're the beatdown, you probably don't plan on blocking anyway. Back in the mid-1990s, 2-mana 2/2s were pretty hard to find, especially outside of green, so even a 2-mana 2/2 that had a downside was sought after by aggressive decks, and that's what led to Ironclaw Orcs seeing significant play in the early days of Magic, including in the game's earliest mono-red aggro decks. Obviously, these days it has been overtaken by a slew of more efficient 2-drops, but it was one of the best 2-drops for aggro decks for a pretty long time. If you want to know more about early mono-red aggro decks, that is another type of deck I've looked at in my deck history series, so check that out. At number 3, it is Zorgo Ojutai. This orc is also a dragon, and that's because it's one of the team-up legendaries from March of the Machine, with this card featuring 2 characters from the plane of Tarkir, Zirgo, a legendary orc, and Ojutai, a legendary dragon. They are a 5-mana 4/4 with flying and haste, and it has hexproof the turn you play it. Additionally, when it or another dragon does combat damage to an opponent, you look at the top 3 cards of your library and put one of them into your hand. You can also choose to bounce a dragon, including Zirgo and Ojutai. Thanks to flying haste and hexproof, it is very difficult for your opponent to ever avoid getting hit by this the turn it comes down, which gives you some immediate value. You can also choose to keep bouncing it to your hand if you want to make sure Zirgo and Ojutai can hang on to hexproof. While Zirgo and Ojutai is a very new card, it has quickly established itself as a powerful control deck win condition in Standard, and it looks like that's going to continue, giving it a shot at continuing to move up the list. At number 2, it is Zirgo Bellstriker. This is the same Zirgo from Zirgo and Ojutai. Zirgo Bellstriker is a great red 1-drop as he's a 2/2, and he also comes with dash. Zirgo does have a couple of downsides though. For one thing, he can't block big creatures, but if you're playing red aggro, you're not going to be blocking anyway. The other downside is that he's legendary. This means that if you ever have 2 of him, the other one is just going to be a dead card. On the bright side, he represents a fast enough clock for red decks that he will often die to early removal or get blocked, and then you can just play your other Zirgo. Unsurprisingly, Zirgo has been played in red aggro decks in both Standard and Pioneer, and it's likely he keeps adding to his score in the latter. And at number 1, it is White Plume Adventurer. This 3-mana 3/3 lets you take the initiative when it enters the battlefield. This means you venture into the Undercity, a dungeon that offers all kinds of great effects. You get to move 1 space in the dungeon every upkeep, so it ends up giving you all kinds of value for very little investment. The downside is that your opponent can take the initiative from you if one of their creatures does combat damage to you, but that downside doesn't offset the insane value White Plume Adventurer generates. The Adventurer also lets you untap a creature during your opponent's upkeep, and if you've completed a dungeon, you can untap all of them. The Adventurer was printed in Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, so the only 60-card formats it is legal in are Legacy and Vintage, but this hasn't stopped it from seeing a ton of play. Venturing into the Undercity is insanely strong, so strong that it is incredibly powerful even in Magic's most powerful formats. In Legacy, it was warping the entire format, with many decks trying to run white to have access to it, and Hate Bear decks in particular became way too powerful. This ultimately led to it getting banned in the format, but not before it racked up a ton of points in a very short span of time. It continues to see heavy play in Vintage, so it's likely to stay at the top of this list going forward. So those are the top 10 orcs in Magic. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to catch up on past videos, including many more that look at creature types, you should see a playlist on your screen shortly. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting me and the channel, you can do so by becoming a channel member or a patron. You can find ways to do both of those things in the description. Thanks for watching.